it's Janoaz, and welcome back to another episode of Treknalysis. Last week, I talked about Worf's abilities as a father when his son Alexander came to live with him on the Enterprise in the Next Gen Season 5 episode New Ground. But some commenters brought up a point that I had thought about for that video that didn't make it into the final cut. K'Ehleyr. Specifically, her not telling Worf he had a son. And if you don't know who K'Ehleyr is, a recap. Back in Season 2, an old flame of Worf's, a half-Klingon, half-human woman named K'Ehleyr, arrived on the Enterprise for a diplomatic mission, and she and Worf rekindled their romance. On the holodeck of all places. Worf wanted to take the oath, or get married, but K'Ehleyr wasn't ready, and even though they had strong feelings for each other, they ended up parting ways. Now, I would argue that K'Ehleyr not telling Worf he had a son ended up causing difficulties and frustration for both of them later in the show. While I'm going a bit out of order here, and I probably should have talked about this last week, today I'm going to talk about K'Ehleyr and the gem of an episode, Season 4's reunion. Heck, this episode was a strong contender for my top 10 Next Gen episodes video from a few years back. It's a really good episode.
Not even a bite on the cheek for old time's sake?
But before I go further, make sure you subscribe to my channel. I talk a lot about Star Trek, video games, and whatever else I feel like talking about. And if you'd like to help support the channel, consider becoming a member. Be great to have you aboard. The episode begins with the Enterprise on its way to investigate anomalies, which is rendered moot when a Klingon cruiser decloaks and comes into view.
Hello, Captain Picard.
Ambassador K'Ehleyr.
Lieutenant Worf.
K'Ehleyr is here because there's a urgent matter she needs to discuss with Picard and requests permission to come aboard. Picard grants it and sends Mr. Worf to receive her.
I must request permission to send another officer. Dishonor among Klingons may offend Ambassador K'Ehleyr.
Worf, knowing K'Ehleyr and what she thinks about Klingon tradition, that's bullshit.
And you will not go into hiding whenever a Klingon vessel uncloaks.
And denied. Worf heads over to the transporter room and hears that two are beaming over from the Klingon vessel. We were just expecting K'Ehleyr, but okay, whatever. But Worf's face goes from his usual stoic expression to one of shock when K'Ehleyr beams over with the galaxy's oldest 1-year-old.
You are the father!
K'Ehleyr drops Alexander off at school, noting that he hasn't had much contact with other kids and hopes he'll be alright. And Alexander not playing nice with other children comes up later in the show.
He takes toys from the other students and then denies taking them.
Worf is incredibly uncomfortable with the situation, not because he just found out he has a kid, but because he accepted discommendation last season. Now for a recap on that episode, Worf's father Moog was posthumously accused by Duras, the son of his greatest rival, of betraying the Klingon Empire to the Romulans during the attack on Khitomer, which Worf survived as a child, but his parents did not. Worf challenged the claim, risking execution, and with Picard's help, uncovered evidence to prove that it was actually Duras' father who betrayed the Empire. Duras, however, gained a lot of support in the Empire, and exposing him would lead to civil war. So Worf was made the fall guy, and the entire Klingon High Council was in on it. In order to protect the Empire, Worf accepted discommendation, making himself a dishonorable outcast among Klingons, but ironically becoming the most honorable person in the room.
So now what? I have to perform some ridiculous ritual to talk to you?
See, this is what I mean about Worf's excuse at the start of the episode. K'Ehleyr doesn't care if he's discommendated. Heck, if she respected Klingon tradition, she would have married Worf a year and a half ago when he wanted to take the oath.
I will not take the oath.
K'Ehlyr's annoyed at Worf's behavior, remarking that it looked like he wanted to talk.
A few minutes ago, you looked like someone with a question to ask.
Must I ask the question?
How many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop?
Now, if you got caught up in the family drama...
What should I tell Alexander, that he has no father?
K'Ehleyr is on board the Enterprise for a reason. The Klingon Empire is facing civil war. But what else is new? Two factions are vying for power, and if there's a war, everyone's going to be dragged into it like a fight in 10 forward. Chancellor Kimpak was the only one maintaining the peace, but there's one problem. He's dying. So Picard goes over to his ship to talk to him and finds out that he's been long-term poisoned and there's no cure. He wants Picard to be the mediator and find the next Chancellor, but Picard's all like, dude, I can't get involved in this.
The Prime Directive. Prime Directive. Violate the Prime Directive?
But Picard basically has no choice because it would be a great insult to the Klingon Empire, and besides, Kimpak already named him and the two leaders of the factions are on their way here. Hey, it's better to ask forgiveness than seek permission, am I right?
You had no right to involve me without my permission.
If I'd asked, you would have said no.
Kimpak says that Picard isn't so much choosing the next leader of the Klingon Empire, but is more there to babysit while they duke it out. Officially. In reality, Kimpak wants Picard to find out who killed him.
A Klingon who kills without showing his face has no honor.
We got a little murder mystery and a little Klingon intrigue to go along with our family drama. Very nice. So who are the top suspects?
Gowron. Or Duras.
Interesting.
Interesting.
Well, Duras did try to kill Picard and Worf's brother Kern, dishonored Worf, and the Council covered it up. Let's see. Who could have done it? The guy we never heard of up to this point? Or the guy who already lied and attempted murder? Twice!
Oh, for the glory of the Empire.
Meanwhile, Alexander is practically feral.
I hope you'll be all right.
Lady, you have a kid who growls at other kids!
There is no honor in attacking the weak.
I would have won.
Well, clearly Alexander didn't inherit the honor gene.
I don't want to be a warrior.
Are you even my son? Worf takes Alexander back to Kalar, and Worf isn't thrilled that Alexander knows nothing about being a Klingon.
He knows nothing of our ways.
Our ways. You mean Klingon ways, don't you?
So Worf wants Alexander to be raised as a Klingon, but Kalar, since she's half human, wants him to find his own way, and why does Worf care? He won't even acknowledge him. Which, of course, leads into the conversation about why Kalar didn't tell Worf he had a son. Her answer?
You would have insisted that we take the oath, just as tradition would demand.
Now, I love Kalar. She needed to make many more appearances on the show, and I wanted her and Worf to finally get together and raise Alexander. She's feisty and strong, and she's a good foil for Worf's formality. They went really well together in an opposites attract kind of way. That being said, Kalar did Worf wrong by not telling him he had a son, which I would argue is a big reason why he had so much trouble with Alexander later in the show. First of all, Worf had the right to know he had a kid, and I think Worf would have stepped up as a father if she'd told him sooner before the discommendation. Heck, he's clearly acting like a father figure now, even if he's not officially acknowledging Alexander as his son. By not telling Worf about Alexander, keeping him out of a chunk of Alexander's formative years, Kalar unintentionally ended up causing problems for Worf when he started to raise Alexander because he was trying to raise him as a Klingon when Kalar hadn't. Heck, Kalar spends a good part of her screen time saying how ridiculous Klingon customs are. Is it any wonder that these two had as many problems as they did? Sure, Worf and Kalar would have had conflicting parenting styles either way, but at least they could have tried to work it out while both being involved in Alexander's life. And as for Kalar's reasons for not telling him, I'm sorry, but that's bullshit. Even if Worf insisted that they take the oath, what was stopping her from refusing like she did the last time? She's no shrinking violet. Heck, she's pretty evenly matched with Worf. As much as I like Kalar, she's in the wrong here, and she should have told Worf he had a son.
You should not have kept this from me.
Well, now you know.
Anyway, Worf says he can't acknowledge Alexander as his son because of his dishonor, which would carry on not only to Alexander, but for his children for a couple of generations. Kalar, however, can't understand why he accepted discommendation in the first place, since Worf challenged the original accusation against his father, so he must know that Moog was innocent. She knows some funny business went down in that council chamber because Worf wouldn't just give up like that. But Worf isn't talking. Meanwhile, Kimpek has died and the right of succession and the murder investigation begins. Duras arrives and wants to finish this as quickly as possible, and is rather peeved that Picard is not only running the show, but taking his time. He also takes a cheap shot at Worf, even though they both know that he's a filthy liar.
Keep that Patak away from the ceremony, Picard. He has no place on a Klingon ship.
I want you to know that I am aware of your discomfort.
Worf asserts that Duras must not lead the Council, which I know sounds personal, but Duras' father betrayed the Empire. Picard shoots down that notion, saying that he has a legal claim, he can't hold him responsible for his father's crimes, and even though Duras laid the blame on Worf, Worf was the one who accepted discommendation. And Jean-Luc, that's bullshit. Sure, you can't blame Duras for his father's crimes, but he was certainly willing to blame Worf for his father's supposed crimes, and Worf only accepted discommendation to protect the Empire. You know all this, and besides that, you even suspect Duras killed Kimpek, so don't get all high and mighty on Worf. Picard tells his chief of security that Kimpek was killed in the Klingon billiard room with the poison, and Worf already suspects something's afoul. A Klingon wouldn't use poison because there'd be no honor in it. He might not know much about Gowron, but Duras?
I know him. His heart is not Klingon.
The Sonshi ceremony to confirm Kimpek's death and kick off the race for the next Chancellor is underway, and we get our first look at Gowron.
That's Gowron.
His eyes. His eyes.
Yes, Gowron's eyes are their own character in the franchise, and you'll see plenty of them. His eyes know all and see all. Hey buddy, my eyes are up here.
But whose eyes are those?
Look into that man's eyes. Those eyes can hide no lies. Picard's about to move everything to the Enterprise when...
What are you standing around for? Do you not know a jailbreak when you see one?
Back on the Enterprise, Worf checks up on Kalar, having heard about the explosion and needing to, write a report.
Were you concerned about me?
As head of security, it is my duty to be concerned.
Worf admits that Kalar was right and that he would have insisted on taking the oath when he found out about Alexander, but not just because of tradition. Which I think he made pretty clear the last time around.
I will not be complete without you.
Clearly, Worf loves Kalar, and it wouldn't be the Batleth wedding everyone would have assumed it was. Heck, even Kalar admitted she had strong feelings for Worf. She only didn't take the oath because she was scared. Kalar admits that she wanted to tell Worf about Alexander, but she just wasn't ready. She's come to realize that in the same way that Worf wouldn't be complete without her, she needs Worf as well.
You're a part of me, Worf.
They begin to take the oath, but this time Worf is the one to cut it short because he doesn't want to pass on his dishonor to Kalar and Alexander. While Kalar doesn't care what other Klingons think of Worf, Alexander might want to live in the Empire one day, and he would be viewed as a traitor. Ultimately, Worf can't marry Kalar or acknowledge Alexander as his son.
If you cannot be his father, at least be his friend.
And he makes good on his word.
Make it part of your hand, part of your arm.
Meanwhile, Duras and Gowron are getting along.
You will die slowly. Duras.
Gowron later approaches Kalar to get her to persuade Picard to speed up the rite of succession, offering her everything from her own ship to a seat on the Council.
Women may not serve on the Council.
I see what you're doing there, Gowron.
You talk like a Ferengi.
Every man has his price.
Gowron also points out that Kimpek was stubborn and now he's gone and you better not make the same mistake he did.
Kimpek was old and weak. I am not.
See, does this look like a woman who would take an oath if she didn't want to? She was straight up threatened and it didn't even faze her. It also turns out that the explosive that was used during the Sonshi ceremony was of, can anyone guess? Romulan origin. Well, gee, whose house has had ties to the Romulans?
It must be Duras.
Why?
No reason. Certainly not connected to what happened in Season 3, that's for sure. Kaylar starts her sleuthing, running into restriction after restriction, access being denied until she finds out that all of this was restricted by Counselor Duras, who just caught wind of Kaylar snooping and confronts her. And Kaylar starts dropping facts, laying out all the evidence how the records surrounding Khitomer were restricted, that Duras' father was coincidentally also at Khitomer, that evidence was even fudged to make Rogue look guilty.
The son betrays his people to the Romulans, just as his father did.
Duras.
Meanwhile, Worf is being Alexander's friend, certainly not a father or anything. Must get his practice from Picard. When he and Alexander arrive to find Kaylar dying in her quarters, having been attacked, and gee, wouldn't an emergency medical transport be really helpful right now? Worf is able to get from Kaylar that it wasn't Gowron, so he knows it was Duras. And he's super pissed. With her last ounce of strength, Kaylar takes Alexander's hand and places it in Worf's before dying. And so goes Worf's best love interest. And the start of the Worf curse. Anyone he loves just ends up dying horribly.
Stay with the doctor.
Worf, when did you...
Beverly, you just let him leave? Dude's girlfriend was just killed. He's and comes from a culture of revenge quests. You didn't think something was up?
Where's Worf?
I don't know. He disappeared just after I arrived.
Oh, but I'm sure it's nothing. Uh-oh. Comm badge is coming off. Shit's about to get real.
Kaylar was my mate.
It was at this moment he knew. He f***ed up.
So, I guess Gowron's Chancellor now. Picard gives Worf a talking to. Mr. We have to respect other cultures, even if we disagree with them, and I respect them all, tells Worf that he did a no-no. At least Sisko's more consistent.
I don't give a damn about Klingon beliefs, rituals, or custom.
But the worst Picard does to Worf is put a reprimand on his record. A slap on the wrist, if you will. After all, Picard didn't even like Duras. But with Duras dead, Picard suggests that maybe now's the time to tell the truth about what really happened at Khitomer. With Duras dead in disgrace, why keep it quiet? Worf points out that the entire council was in on it, and they're probably not willing to admit it anytime soon. But that time will come. At the end of the season. Worf meets with Alexander, telling him that he's sending him to live with his human parents who will care for him. While Alexander wants to stay with Worf, who he's developed a little rapport with, Worf explains that Alexander deserves a home and a family, which he cannot provide. Which is half true. Look, I defended Worf's decision in my last Treknalysis video about sending Alexander to live with his parents, who provided a stable environment for him. But not providing a family? Dude, you're his father! You are family! The episode ends on a very Star Wars moment between father and son.
Are you my father?
Yes. I am your father.
No. I am your father.
And that was Reunion, probably one of the top episodes in Next Gen. It makes an excellent Klingon episode, political thriller, and family drama. While it was an excuse to talk about a great episode, the main reason I wanted to talk about it was Kaylar and her decision not to tell Worf about Alexander. As much as I love the character, Kaylar's certainly capable of making bad decisions, and I found her reasoning behind not telling Worf he had a son to be pretty weak. Maybe she didn't want to be pestered about taking the oath, but Worf still had a right to know that he had a son who he's responsible for. And I think that decision, which kept Worf out of raising his son early on, made things difficult between Worf and Alexander after Kaylar's death when Worf was the sole surviving parent. Alexander was starting to become set in his ways, so it was a lot harder for him to accept Klingon values from Worf later on, especially when Kaylar disregarded them. Heck, you can argue that Alexander might have had an easier time in school if he had a sense of honor instead of growling at kids and becoming the ship's liar. Yeah, finding his own way wasn't working out, was it?
He is also my son, and I am half human. He will find his own ways.
That being said, K'Ehleyr is one of the most badass Klingons in Star Trek, and she's only half Klingon. She has the Klingon strength while also being down to earth, and it's really a shame that this is her last appearance.
I miss her too.
So, what do you think? Did K'Ehleyr make the right call to keep Alexander from Worf, or should she have told him sooner? Do you agree with me that her decision might have caused Worf and Alexander problems later on, or is it all on Worf? And what are some of your favorite Klingon episodes in Star Trek? Please, leave comments below and discuss. As always, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Treknalysis. If you like what you see, why not give my video a like and subscribe to my channel? Tell your friends! Until next time...